actually hear both staff and patient stories, it actually helps us to get a little bit more of a focused view on specific areas within our trust and their perspective and how they're trying to improve things. And from a patient perspective, we're always wanting to hear how we can actually improve, but also not just about improving, also hear about some of the successes that take place within our trust as well. So it really, really helps to ground our discussions and also contributes to plotting the way forward as well in terms of strategizing what next for the trust. So that's great. Again, thanks. Sorry, so we're going to start our meeting. Before we actually start, just for the purposes of, we've got some new guests visiting us today, but those of you who are online may not know everybody in the room around the table, so we will introduce ourselves. So I'll start off with myself, and I'm Phil Gale, and Trust Chair.
I'm Roisin, I'm the Trust Chief Executive.
I'm David Thompson, Director of Finance. Winston Weir, Non-Executive Director.
Hello, I'm Lisa, I'm the Chief Nurse.
I'm Linda Holland, Non-Executive and Chair of the Quality and Safety Committee.
I'm Hannah Sullivan, I'm the Corporate Governance and Membership Manager. I'm Kat Dudley, I'm the Company Secretary.
I'm Sue Gladwell, Non-Executive Director and Chair of the Committee.
I'm Ruby Daria, Executive Director and Consultant Psychiatrist.
Hi, I'm Monica Shafak, Non-Executive Director, Chair of Care and Minds, and I'm also the board lead for Freedom to Speak Up.
Morning, I'm Vanessa, I'm the Executive Director of Operations.
Morning, Val Clare, Non-Executive Director, Deputy Chair and Chair of Finance and Performance.
Morning, I'm Patrick Nunbury, I'm the Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Director of Strategy and Partnerships.
Would our governors like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, John Travers, non-clinical staff governor and lead governor.
Hi, I'm Leah Stabber, I'm the staff governor.
I'm Associate Director of Communications.
I'm Sharda Abhilash, Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Black Country Healthcare Foundation Trust. I'm here to observe the board as part of my leadership learning.
So welcome. You don't need to introduce yourself, so that's great. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. You've got
Hi, I'm Ranky Adijolu, I'm CXI for Advice to be an NHS England South-East, and I've been invited here at Patrick. I'm shadowing him today, I'm aspiring MED. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Welcome, and thanks for joining us today. So, going to the agenda, apologies for absence.
David Tita and Thomas Keeley.
Good. And are there any declarations of interest in relation to the agenda today? I also ask, in terms of declaration of interest, if you need to update your declaration of interest, please do let Kat and Hannah know so that it can be updated. And sometimes it falls off the radar. We've either connected or we've joined to a group or we've become an associate somewhere. It has to be updated on our register, so we can do that. Going to the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of August. So can I just check, rather than me going through absolutely every page, is there anything in the minutes that you would like to draw our attention to that has either not been captured or is captured incorrectly, or there's an omission somewhere from the last meeting? Sue?
There's just a slight, I'm not sure whether for purpose of clarity, in section 13, where there's a paragraph on the support for managers, whether that should be retained or retrained, I'm not sure. It says retained, but that didn't make sense. I'm not sure if that's needs clarification. Section 13, the previous agenda, the paragraph starting with your initials, Phil.
It could be retention.
It is retention, yeah.
Because it's about if the manager's not there, they won't happen. So I think you can read it as being retained. I think that's the discussion.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Another one. So paragraph 17, I think we have a useful update on the audit committee report. But I think it ends with, we need for the audit committee to explain oversight of any cyber security risks. I think it's one of the audit committee, it's a whole organisation. And if anything, I think ICT reports into the finance and performance committee. I just want to say that it's a whole auditorship. And it's not just this organisation, many other organisations are experiencing the risk of cyber attacks. It just came across that it was just for the audit committee to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Does that conclude any amendments of minutes? Okay, and so then if we just look at the actions, I think. Green, yeah, there's nothing there for us. Okay, so moving on to the Chair's report. So my report is there, and I hope that you've all had an opportunity to read through the events that I've been involved in over the past couple of months. I do want to start off just by saying a huge thank you really to all those who passed on your condolences to myself. I had a recent family bereavement and I was unable to attend the AGM. It was really appreciative, but I did watch it. So afterwards, so it's really good because you all did a fantastic job. So once again, thank you very much. In the report, I make some reference to the Darcy report, which was published on the 12th of September, and it sets out a series of important challenges for the NHS. And part of the reason why I made reference to that is because there were some quite important points that were documented in Darcy's report, which will give us as a board an opportunity to discuss and to think about our approach to some of the things that he's raised, particularly in relation to mental health. So I thought it was important for me just to draw the board's attention to that as well. I also, in terms of, I'm going to flip down, so I'm not going to go through everything, had an interesting number of visits, but I'm going to kind of focus on one. And one of the visits was just a couple of weeks ago, and that was to the Tamarind, and it was Family and Friends and Carers Day. It was very short notice last year. Vanessa did the awarding, sat on a panel and awarded the different units really that actually created some artwork and also did some culinary work in terms of baking and cakes. So we went along. What was actually fantastic was it gave me an opportunity to actually talk to the staff, the service users, but also to speak to the parents and carers that came along that day. So I was there for a few hours, and it was really great. The atmosphere was really good, and some people pulled me to one side. Some family members did, just to express their feelings. And you're thinking, oh, is it going to be negative? Or they were all positive, really positive. And it was fantastic. And Abdullah did a fantastic job, and so did everybody else. I was super pleased to be able to do that. I've also visited Rayside as well, in patient unit, over the past couple of months, and also HMP Birmingham, where I met hard-working staff team and observed operations there. They're working in a very challenged environment, but they're doing a fantastic job, and I was super proud to spend a few hours there and to be taken around the prison service. The rest of the information contained in my report is there for your perusal in terms of the partner and system development and stakeholder meetings that I've attended, and also the some
information there around the provider collaborative as well, and also stakeholder engagement. I've been involved in. I'm just trying to look through if there's anything else specific. But I do want to give a shout out and mention it in my report, the very last bullet point, which was to congratulate Mushnak, who's been shortlisted for Patient Contributor of the Year for the Royal College of Psychiatrists Awards, which is really, really well. He's not here today, but just for the record, it's well deserved. Congratulated. I think that it's going to take place sometime in November, isn't it? So yeah, fantastic news, and we'll continue to wish him well. That's my report. Are there any questions? No? We'll continue and move on to the next report.
Thank you. First thing I'll pass over to Vanessa. Many people would have noticed that most of us sitting here, there's nothing green on, so from a people perspective, we are in the beginning of October, in the month of people speak up, and this month's theme is listening to understand, so we're ready to bring on the information and contribution to that. You may need to come to the table. Green contributions to the table. It is also the beginning of Black History Month, and we will be acknowledging a number of people in the organisation as part of that. The theme this year is around reclaiming narratives. So it's around being really clear about stories of history that need to be retold in the right way, but also recognising people that made contributions to our history that have not been acknowledged because in the past it was and so that's the thematic for this year. Also under people, I wanted to just highlight, first of all, I should have said apologies for the fact that the report that was originally convened and therefore on our website was in fact last month's report and wasn't this month's report. So that's only been rectified this morning. I only had to notice this morning that was the case. So those of you that have already read the report and didn't notice it, you'll need to go back and reread it with the new pieces. I'm not going to go through everything that's in it, but I did want to just highlight these things. So people, as I said, we are still seeing our levels of vacancies coming down, the recruitment activity is reaping some benefit in that space. We are continuing to reduce costs on agencies above and beyond what we'd originally expected, actually, and particularly thank you to our leaders who are doctors who are supporting the drive down of that within the doctor space. Bank really needs to be our next focus. We've got a number of activities that we've agreed that we run around about, and of course they'll be reported through both People Committee and Finance and Performance Committee. Equally, our turnover in our stock survey, a story earlier, Sharon made reference to people who are leaving, and what we're seeing is that actually less people are leaving. Now, that's not to say people aren't, but that less people are, and we need to keep up that good work in that space. We've also had notification between today and the previous meeting around a number of pay arrears, and you can see my notes also in the finance and sustainability section that they're going to be paid over the next few months. We yet to see what the potential impact of the decision that nursing unions have taken around not accepting the pay that's been. So I think we're bracing ourselves, I think, for the fact that we're going to have some more industrial action, but we will wait and see around that. Also just wanted to highlight, because I think there's an opportunity to do so in this public board, that under the sustainability, I've also referenced that Birmingham, the Mental Health Client Collaborative for Birmingham and Solid Health, both as the lead provider, as a provider of mental health services, alongside Birmingham Women's and Children's Trust, who is also a key provider. We have both boards and the committee have made the decision to move in principle to do two things. One is to develop an all-age mental health service, and the other is to do so with one provider providing those services, and that provider being us. There's a number of items that you'll see under quality. You'll see that we're doing a number of pieces of work around learning from deaths and enhancing our approaches and our perspectives around that. A piece that will give some information about how we're continuing on our journey of rectifying some of the backlog and difficulties that we're experiencing around managing and responding to complaints. And the fact that we have now received 2 draft CQC reports, both of which will be published in the near future, and we will alert when we're clear on what those dates are. We also launched our flu campaign in recent weeks, and at the AGM last week, 40 individuals had their flu vaccination. So we'll be actively encouraging, and particularly using some of the information that we're getting from elsewhere in the world, where actually this sort of triple hit is having quite a devastating effect, and so therefore having the flu vaccine may be more important this year than it has in previous years for most of us. On the other kind of news side, I just wanted to, I put a piece in about, and you mentioned it as well for the new report, about the social unrest and the riots that we experienced. I do want, as you did, Phil, thank everybody for the support that they gave in the immediacy. But you'll see in my report that I also acknowledge that actually the ongoing impact of racism and Islamophobia is significant and can't be underestimated. And that we, as both a major employer, but also a major provider of services to people who suffer trauma, including trauma that comes about through racism and Islamophobia, we have a key role in it to go to think about how do we support more effectively than perhaps we have been up to date with partners, creating greater social cohesion. Because I think what we've seen is that social cohesion we thought we might have had is being eroded in many ways. So a lot more conversations, I think, and a lot more thinking that we need to do as an organisation around that. We also launched our White Allies Network during September, and the first formal meeting that will take place in November. We've tried in the past to launch this network and not succeeded, it's faltered, and I think that's partly because we're a bit unclear about what its purpose might be. There's been disagreement about what it may or may not need to achieve, but I think we've now got to a space where there's much greater thought being put to that, and I think a real sense that actually a better opportunity has now arisen for us to really think about how those of us who are white in the organisation can take a more central role in supporting our anti-discrimination and our anti-racist ambition. We had two ministerial visits, one of whom was the Secretary of State. He visited Birmingham and Solihull when he came to meet with leaders, so chief executives from across the Midlands, and he chose Birmingham as the place that he wanted to meet with us. And I mean, I think it's probably the first time we've had a Secretary of State who has made the effort to come out and make such visits, and he certainly in that discussion did not shy away from answering some of the more challenging questions that many of us have. And I have to say he was very knowledgeable and understood the role he's got, etc. So I think we look forward, I think, to what that might translate into. We also had a really successful visit from the Veterans Minister, Alistair Khan, who's also one of our local MPs, and he stayed for over 2 hours with our experts by experience, with our colleagues who are working collectively. It was an opportunity for him to really help you to hear about how collaborative work, difference working as collaboratives can mean. So it was a really, really successful visit, and I think he also put out some press releases and some interviews after the visit as well, if people wanted to. Like Phil, I've put a link into the Darcy report in my report, and highlighted that actually there's quite a lot, not a great deal, but there's quite a lot of reference to mental health, particularly around thinking about where we've had exponential rises in ill health and health, and especially depression being one of those. And I'll stop there and hand over to Vanessa, clinical services.
Thank you, Roisin. So morning all. As usual, trying to cram 2 months' worth of clinical activity into a few pages of the board report has been a challenge, but I'll pull out some of the highlights here by going through each of the divisions. I think just wanted to, before I sort of say, I think we had our clinical governance meeting yesterday, and just started really sort of taken back by the work we're doing around staff vacancies. We really are looking at vacancies, how we can work teams differently, and perceptive shifts around growing our own. Felt really positive. We only met yesterday, but I just reflected on it yesterday and this morning, so I just wanted to share it here. We can pull through some of that information into QPACE and then bring it to board maybe next time, but at least for Vid and myself were at that meeting, so it was really good. So just to pull out a few points here, neighbourhood mental health teams, again, I always want to give them a name check in the report. It's, our final year of the community transformation, but the neighbourhood teams are really embedded in. We're doing a lot more work with our primary care colleagues, with our GPs, just around what this role looks like, how we can work that across the piece. So it's just important to mention here around the R's roles or the additional reimbursement role scheme. Also we've noted here is the work we're doing with the community collaborative as well. So really feeling that we are joined up from a physical and mental health perspective, really embedded and rooted in communities, which is what we talk about in our strategy. So really feeling that now. I'm very proud of our clinical services. We've got a lot to do internally from an operational perspective, but very outward focused as well. Really promoting mental health, trying to join services up and trying to have that parity across our system. So that feels really strong in the report also. Compass, I wanted to talk about the Compass dual diagnosis team. So they've done a bit of refocus work, and particularly working with our acute and urgent care division, supporting them around dual diagnosis. Find a lot of people coming into our services with some challenges around alcohol, drug misuse, and how we can actually support more collectively with that team embedded in acute and urgent care. So a refocusing of that, working alongside, offering that speciality and the training and the supervision has been really key in my CCR. If I moved on to secure and offender health, again, lots of bits to pull out here, but just particularly to mention Rayside Clinic, Phil, Chair, you mentioned it also in your visit there, and that we have put additional resource and we are recruited to additional healthcare assistants over there. Working really well, got a good recruitment round and looking to recruit further for those posts. So that's really good news. The Forensic Intensive Rehab Support Team, the first team as we know them, lots of quality improvement work going on there, which is really good to see here. And I know I've talked here before around their reallocation to another environment because they're a big growing team and very sort of short on space. So that project's actually started now, hopefully with moving next year. So that's good to acknowledge here. If I move on to acute and urgent care, the report mainly focuses around the work we've been doing around out of area. So again, every board and every committee meeting talk about out of area. So it is when we're inappropriately placing people from an acute perspective outside of Birmingham and Solihull, which is not good for the individual, for their recovery, not close to their young ones, not close to the local communities, but also from a financial perspective as well. It's quite a challenge for us as an organisation. We took some time out as the out of area steering group to reset what we were doing and our focus. Really good group of people looking at what we would do differently. And the name out of area steering group, we just think about, is that really doing what it says on the tin? Trying to make it more clinically focused, trying to make it more pathway focused. So there's been lots of suggestions and ideas of what we really call and rebrand ourselves as a group. So I think we're going to have to put names into a hat and pull them out. So we're meeting on Friday to do that. This is more about a patient experience, a patient recovery, and about patient pathways. So actually, how do we describe that in our title? So the reset of the meeting is going to look particularly at working in localities. So that's our real focus, looking at localities, being really clear about who's accountable for their locality, being really clear about the clinical leadership in those localities, and also having a suite and a dashboard of information to help individuals to actually work that through. So we'll look at people who are placed inappropriately out of area. We'll look at some of the service users who are clinically ready for discharge and how we'll support those in the locality. Look at people who need to come into a bed that we're holding and supporting under home treatment. Again, how do we support them to the service users to be admitted and actually to help with the discharge. So it's a real focus around flow, and also some of our service users who may go to A&E departments, also how they can be brought into an inpatient bed. So a really, really good reset, and a bit of a name check to Phil President and Adam, who have been working on the dashboard. It's been really, really helpful around what does the KPIs look like, and we've set some KPIs and some challenges, key performance indicators and challenges to the team around actually to keep that flow going. We've also got re-looked at our discharge policy around clinically ready for discharge, and met with our local authority colleagues. So we have a growing concern around our service users who are clinically ready for discharge. I think I've described here between 2 and 3 service users, if we include both older adults and adults who are ready for discharge, but because of onward pathway blockages or challenges, we've been able to discharge. So working with our local authority colleagues, we've had a really, really, again, very helpful discussion. So we're going to be bringing in a turnaround team of a group of social workers, as well as a homeless pathway social worker and an OT who will work in our mental health trust, working alongside our staff to actually help and improve the flow. That's reset will start next Thursday on our deep dive meeting, so really, really helpful. Very, very joined and very collegiate with our local authority colleagues. Not all of our clinically ready discharge are related to social work allocation, many are, but also housing, joint funding panels, so we'll absolutely have the deep dive and actually look at that. So it is a challenge for us at the moment, but we feel we've got a plan to move that forward. So I can talk more about that next time, and I'll bring something to MFPP committee as well. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on those 2 items because I think they're real key pieces of work for us. If I move on to primary care, dementia and specialty services, I wanted to name check the West Older Adult Community Team. They were successful with the Trust Team of the Month, and there's also a really nice quote in my report around from a service user. Just want to express their gratitude and the support shown for their sister, and in the care and support they've got, you know, they felt that their loved one is actually back to how they used to be. So that's really important to acknowledge that. Older adults, inpatients, we continue with the wellbeing programme, and I always sort of name check Leona on that because she's driving that from a lead nurse perspective, so it's really good to see that. And to note also the carers group, which is being supported by our Meridian project at Reservoir Court, which is really important as well, supporting our carers for our loved ones, and I'm one of those people. I connect with that very, very, very closely. Birmingham Healthy Minds, absolutely driving forward their KPIs and the support, and we can see in the performance report that there's significant improvements that Birmingham Healthy Minds are actually making around making sure they see people in a timely manner and looking at the outcomes from a service user perspective. And finally, my name check to Jo Wood, our Principal Art Psychotherapist and Community Art Psychotherapist, who's been nominated and shortlisted for a British Association of Arts Therapy Award. So well done to him. I shall stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and also Sheen. Can I just open it for questions from our board colleagues?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, just something I was going to raise in my board assurance report as well, Vanessa, just around out-of-area, and you talked about clinically ready for discharge as well. It's all about, you talk about flow. I've been here for 11 months now. But I do remember having the same conversation about, patient experience, about and about, just making that pathway a lot more slicker so that we try and avoid inappropriate areas, and obviously discharge is an issue. What is different this time? Because if you look at if you look back at our performance around out of area, it's spiky. So it goes up, we do something, and it comes back down, and you know, then it goes back up again, back down. I think we've had sort of 3 spikes over the last 18 months. So, yeah, we've got to try and understand what is actually different this time around. And if we are, again, sort of temporarily going to fix the issue, you know, so what is that fundamental shift in thinking that's actually going to keep us there in a better place going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a good challenge and a fair question. We had quite a detailed discussion at FPP committee as well around that. So I think what feels different this time is it feels a lot more joined up and collegiate, especially with our local authority colleagues. I think, you know, when things get tough, it does get tough and we don't really work as well as we could together. So, you know, being in a room, working it through, looking at the challenges, you know, and, you know, our local authority colleagues are sort of, you know, not proud as we are of people who need to be discharged. So that feels a lot more joined up. Having one team, one approach and resetting what we hadn't done before. Some difficult conversations to have, some difficult things to reset, but we've done it together. So that feels very, very different. And I think being part of a wider system and having conversations with our acute colleagues, again, around people who are in A&E and the challenges there, where sometimes maybe people may need to be in A&E for a little bit longer until we can find appropriate bed, but actually how we can support together around people who are in A&E. So that feels a lot better, but there's a bit more work to do around that. What feels different as well also is that from a community perspective, we've been just really focusing on the urgent care, on beds, on home treatment. But we've engaged our community colleagues within the organisation, so ICCR, Integrated Community Care and Recovery, and what is their offer too? So their offer also is around putting on additional clinics. Their offer too is looking about people who are frequent attenders to A&E. How can they support to prevent people coming into the urgent care pathway? So that feels a lot more sort of joined up. And this is around our winter planning and being ready for winter. What also feels different is that we've got investments. So our commissioners, ourselves as a lead provider, had put aside some innovation fund of £1.2 million, and organisations were invited to bid for that money. A bit of that money has gone to ourselves, but also lots of that money has gone to the voluntary sector, which is really good. So we have mind navigation workers as well. So again, an additional resource to come in to actually work with us. So I suppose as a summary, it feels a lot more joined up, a lot more collegiate. We're still focusing on the right things and the right areas, but also we have a quality improvement approach around it. Because I think you're right, we haven't sustained it in the past. Hoping with this approach that we will do. Plus we know why we have the spikes now. We've been unpicking that, so we can, you know, predict when it may come again and what we have to do differently around it. I mean, we have to see how we move forward, but I do feel a lot more confident this time. I think there's a lot more buy-in now around the work. And I think, you know, we still have to have the scrutiny. You know, my exec colleagues are absolutely all sort of supporting this work as well going forward. And from BEDA's perspective, around more clinical oversight, we've invested some more additional oversight around home treatment teams as well. So, did you want to add anything? Because I know you're really engaged.
I agree with everything Vanessa said, but just to add, we also are looking at the whole pathway of the patient and very much with neighbourhoods, primary care, because if we give people early help in time, they won't need to be in crisis or need admission. And that's the focus. However, that piece of work is more medium to long term because we're building relationships and we're setting all those things up right now. But we don't lose the focus on that and just look at the urgent side of the pathway. It's important we look at the whole pathway. So we've had quite a few workshops. NHS England have joined us on those workshops. We've also gone out to the GP Partnership Board, had conversations. So there's a lot of buy-in, but that's going to take some time. At the same time, we are having every bed looked at in a very focused way to give it to the person who needs the most, and use less restrictive options than admission for people who are ill, to look after them and wrap around their care in the community. And ideally with the people who really know them the best. So we're trying to create all those communications in the localities. So it's work in progress, and even if we can avoid one admission, it's huge success. So that's.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think we talk about Activaria rather as though it's a sort of an entity, but actually it's an indicator. Yeah. It's an indicator of how we're managing supply and demand. And so the idea that, I think the fact that what we've been managing is that as we undertake one particular piece of work that has some success, won't necessarily support us continuing to support the demand that's there. So I think the narrative that you have from both Edison and Pavita is an indication of the fact that this is ongoing work around what are our pathways of care, how are we doing more early in people, how are we preventing admissions, so that actually that whole how we manage demand is an ongoing continuous improvement piece of work. So I think that's just what I thought I wanted
If I may just come back to that, it's just I totally agree. And I think it's just a conversation we've had at FTP, David, so that it's great to have what we're doing here and sort of have some evidence based around the sort of KPIs and how that patient flow works and where the pinch points are, and therefore you can start to see, as we start to have an influence on those pathways and make them better, that we can see that those pinch points deteriorating. So I think it'd be great to, I know we've requested this data, but it'd be good to sort of start seeing the data.
Yeah. We've obviously shared data here too before, haven't we, around, so when we did community transformation, we had a very clear sense that there was an impact on CMHG caseload. The data report was clear for us, doesn't it, that there is increased demand now. It looks like we know that 31,000 new people have been seen through that service. So that's helped us manage what we understood to be demand, but also that new demand in a way that had we not done that, we wouldn't be in a position to do that.
Okay, on the back of that, can I just get clarity around, in terms of, it's two things really on this point. So one is, what external factors impact on out-of-area placements that is almost kind of outside our gift to control, to get an understanding on that, because obviously, as Val said, you get peaks and troughs. You've heard me repeat it, I sound like a broken record, we'll get specialists in, we'll get grant Dalton in and really do a deep dive and have a look at this. But what I need to hear is, and this is what we can do, that is within our gift, but there are these other external factors that are slightly outside of our control, which we're trying to influence, obviously with our local authority colleagues as well, just to kind of get an understanding of what that looks like.
But I think you've heard a bit about what we're doing internally. What do our pathways look like? How do we get the earliest opportunity to work with people? How do we make sure that clinicians making the decisions are the right ones at the right time? So that point about now having much more out of hours, clinical support from country and making sure that every time we make a decision to admit, that actually we're admitting the person that most needs that. The external factors, there are a number, but Leslie already talked about our local authority colleagues and the support we need from them around making sure, the flow does work, so that most people who are clinically ready to discharge are discharged as soon as we can. And we know there's a number of people in that cohort that aren't being, some of that's been very good, so that's about how we are being timely enough around supporting the discharge planning, but a significant number are around requiring additional support from, whether that's through an approved mental health practitioner, whether that's through support to find supported housing, those kind of things. There's other factors like that for the West Midlands, that we have the highest numbers of Section 136s and 135s. So that's the number of people who are being brought to us for consideration for admission is much greater than anywhere else in the Midlands and beyond actually. And we know that we don't convert, we convert less than 80% of them into an admission. So actually other pathways of care are could be being used. So
the right care, right person is an opportunity for us to work with police around what are we asking of them, what can we expect of them going forward around reducing that mental, being much, making sure that many of those people when they present as 136, 135, actually are more likely to need the intervention that the police have determined they think they do.
You jumped that one. On my next question, because I want to come back to that.
Just right into that, I think there's also, not just with mental health, but for others as well, people that struggle to know where to go to other than A&E. So you've got more people going to A&E generally. That going to up there gives them a problem, means that we've got to respond to it as well. So we've got to make sure, I think, that the entire set of urgent pathways work properly. So we can help them, which would help the financials of UHD. But we're also mean that we've got people go to the right place at the first time. So it does need that overall real transformative piece. And I think that's what's so positive about 24/7, because if you make it the community focus work properly, people don't want to go through that process. So how do you make sure they're able to go somewhere in the right place to remain healthy? Because we allow people, as a system, to become ill before they're into the system, which makes it far worse. So I think the fact that we now, the system shapes as part of provider collaborative, means we've got different opportunities to make this different, but we do have to seize it. I think it's also what I know that BEAD has done is work with doctors. When you go through and review these and do what we should be doing on an ongoing basis, it really makes a difference. It's how we sustain that as the standard piece. So it's really about how we make sure we're able to move from where we have been and dabbling in effect to a sustainable, transformed system that works properly across. You've also got all those external things that have meant it could have been far worse. So we should we handle the plans. We've got to really ratchet look into how should this work properly. And that is really the challenge for us.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's something positive in the report, actually. So we have no more, for example, we're nominating by that said. I think that's a sign that the organisation is given a wider reputation in this region. I just want to go to a specific question now, or just some clarity. On the ICCR report, we talk about collaborative working with community collaborative concept like the Community Trust. The question there, two aspects really. How are we ensuring that both organisations are addressing health inequalities? In other words, where we're looking at the primary care networks, how are we ensuring that our resource provision is towards those areas that really need the support and others? And the second part, which is more operational, I guess, but that is important, is how is it going around sharing our patient records as well across files? Because from a patient point of view, often, one record held by GPs, one record held by providers and stuff. How are we making sure that really enhances and the care and support we provide?
Yep. Those questions. Yes. So health inequalities has absolutely been driving the work we've been doing from a community transformation perspective. I think I showcased at the AGM last week one of the slides. It was quite a busy slide, and it just went into the detail of all the different projects that we're doing, all the work that we've done around health inequalities. It absolutely is a driver. We've been obviously shared that with Birmingham community also, but again they've done work from health inequalities around local population, what the needs are. So I feel that's really joined up, and a real focus around, particularly around access for some of our hard-to-hit communities. So absolutely driving that. So the shared records, I think, obviously we're on RIO. We have conversations around, particularly around, I suppose where we come together is the physical health and the mental health of particular service users in the localities. So particularly over in the east, there's a pilot project running around, and they have a database and they have a screen which shows all the patients where they are in that locality. So we would know at any point in time if a mental health, someone with poor mental ill health is going to A&E on an ambulance, we would know straight away and we can intervene. So that's a very, very different way of working. It's a live screen that we have over in the locality, in one of the lift buildings. So that's really good. So I feel like it's quite well joined up. I think there's more work to do because a meeting that took place last week, a couple of the ADs attended, it feels like we are seeing the same sort of patients, but we're seeing them in one area and in another, as opposed to let's have a joint conversation together. That was a bit of a light bulb moment that both Keisha and Renu sort of fed back, and probably some duplication. So again, the benefits of knowing our population, the benefits of working together is again the productivity and the better outcomes, because you go into one building to have your bloods done, but then you're coming in for your mental health. So I think there's more work to do there. I think it's a really, really good question. But I think, building the relationship together, talking about particular service users is really helping around how can we improve it better. Yeah.
It's also the purpose opportunity to use the joint shared care.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Carl and Chris Holt, who's working in this area, suggesting actually we've really got to work out how we use that to address this. So the information is separate, but it's brought together in a single one, and you've really got to turn that into, so how do we really operate in different ways as well?
So the first part of the question was about the health enhancers and our resources to each block. So are we confident connecting with that and putting the resources in the areas of greatest need? That's what I'm getting into. It's kind of wider piece of that, and if we're not, lots of plans towards the kind of, it may not be something to put today, but
the reason that East was chosen is for that.
Exactly.
That's why East was chosen as the first one.
Yeah.
And it may be that what we might want to get underneath the board, perhaps in my last strategic session, is actually a sense of what's going on in this area.
Yeah.
Because, we have had a lot of people come to see it. Ministers have come to see it, people from the Department of Health have come to see it. So that, so there's a real sense that if we're thinking about what one of the things that Darcy is saying, we're thinking about what the new government is saying about wanting to really think about how does collaboration really work? How does it work around localities and neighbourhoods, and how does it get into the prevention space? Then actually, this is being held up as one of the things that's working. So I think for us to have a better understanding of that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah, and I've just been going busy from always helpful to see in practice, but for me, my reflection is part of our strategic conversation that Rasheen has alluded to, probably help us to think about the power of telemedicine and digital capability in mental health. Because when you actually observe the team, you would see that in physical health, they have progressed on how they use telemedicine and digital. I'm not sure we're capitalizing on that in mental health. So there's an opportunity for us to reflect on that, say what more can we do to reduce health inequalities through digital.
Thank you.
We may want to approach, I'm not sure which ones they are off the top of my head, but there are a number of ICBs who are using some online providers of services, such as Psychiatry UK, to tackle certain aspects of their demand and capacity issues, such as the waiting list for ADHD, ASD, for example, so specific areas of the problems that they're having in the service, not necessarily some of our core services we'll be thinking of, but yeah, it might be worth approaching those that are already using that within their contracts.
Thank you. Sorry.
Just to say, coming back to the earlier thing about the demand and everything, we have an increase in demand of people needing services, and also the other system conversation we're having is, as a system, how can we help things like housing, homelessness, and I just wanted to add that as well, because that is something that we want to help people not to end up in that situation in the first place, so that they need then more help, and that can also cause other stresses and health issues. And in terms of the health inequalities, all our directorates, as Vanessa mentioned as well, have got a health inequalities plan. And everything that we do, QI, quality improvement, research, service evaluations, there's always a question about how is that going to address health inequalities, and that's discussed in our clinical governance. It's become a part of the normal decisions in everything we do. I think it will take time for us to really get to the other side, but I think we are already really leading on a lot of the conversations, and because of our experience with PPRF and other things as well, we will bring reports to the board as well as to how.
I think that's,
We probably need to get that in the timetable exactly when they're coming.
yeah, I think that would be useful to have, to see. That's great. I've just got a couple of questions. One, I want to go back to connects with the discussion around out of area placements. And I just wanted to get clarity around, there was another definition in terms of using placement instead of, it may be suitable to place somebody out of area. I think you mentioned this, and I think changing the term from out of area to inappropriate placement, something like that. So I just wanted to get clarity around that, because some people are moved out of area and it's in their best interest,
Yeah,
from a policy perspective.
absolutely. Yeah, and there are some sort of reasons why that may happen. Again, there might not be the specialist sort of support within area. It may be somebody who maybe needs to be supported outside of Birmingham or Solihull because of clinical reasons or other reasons. And I know at times we've had maybe members of staff that we can't support, so we've had to go to neighbouring trusts to have that support from the member of staff as well who's been called into hospital. So there are reasons around it, and it would be classed as, albeit it's out of area, but it would be appropriate because that's the right place for that individual to have that care and support.
That's not changed, has it? The inappropriate out of area is the terms we employ, for example.
Yeah.
Just points.
But there are appropriate.
If you're looking at something else that's happening, but that's been the same case.
Yeah, appreciate that's all. Thanks for that. The other point was linked to machines, which was by care right person. We're in the fourth quarter, we think, working with our police colleagues. And this is going to be definitive, isn't it? Because this is about section 136. Has it actually begun? Will we be able to get some real data of any impact that this is actually going to have? Because this is a significant area. This quarter is a significant one.
Yeah,
for a number of reasons.
It is the final phase. So we're due to go live on the final phase on the 21st of October. So we've been working up to that, obviously, as we've been through the other phases. It won't be such a big bang. This is when we say we're going to be launching it. So there's, work will continue, the conversations will continue with our police colleagues. But what we have done, we had a workshop last week, again with system partners, just to work through, what does this look like. So we've been doing from a BSOL perspective. We've also been working with Coventry colleagues and backcountry colleagues because they're served by the same police force. So that's been really helpful coming together. And we have a strategic oversight meeting which I attend as well, which we go to with the police and lots of other partners around the table. So again, keep having those conversations. I think what's going to be different, and I've just got an email that I pulled up here around the work. Police have been saying, sometimes we place people on a section 136 because we're not quite sure, but if we had a conversation with someone medical, someone clinical, to have a conversation around what would be the right pathway, we may not have to place someone on a 136, but actually bring them into the PDU, our psychiatric decisions unit, or we may be able to get a street triage car, which we have to go out and see them. So that's a bit of an offer and ask from the police, and we're working that through with what that would look like. So that feels really, really good. So, police saying, we know we've got a problem, how can we work together to address that? And the street triage car, we have, of which, we've got ambulance, member of ambulance and a member of staff are in the car. So they would go and help and support that conversation around what that would look like.
Is that already in situ?
Yes, it's been in situ for quite a while now.
It used to have a police.
It used to have a police. Yeah. But we still kept that. Some of the staff are saying we can help and we can support in instances and, call us. So we have access now to what's called the CAD, which is the ambulance service, all of their data of all the people around ambulances. So we can access that now and have conversations with the ambulance service as well around how we can support people not going into ED and people who are popping up on 136 as well. So it's work in train, And we've said, I think we were going to have more of a deep dive and bring something through to FDP committee, because Kumar is leading that work on our behalf. But obviously we've got a strong presence from FABIDA and our medical colleagues as well, working with the police. So we're taking kind of two approaches to that work.
Right.
So we can bring something through and probably schedule that in to showcase some of that work.
Yeah, that would be
Does that sound?
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, what would be helpful to see in that is what commitment the police are making.
That's
Yes.
the point.
Is actually, you know, that point about the number of 136s that don't convert into
Absolutely.
the requirements, then is huge, and they're an outlier. So I hear very much what you said about the ask of us and how we're going to work differently with the police. We need to understand, I think, in this plan, how they're going to work differently with us.
Absolutely.
And thank you for that point of clarity, because I am scheduled to have another meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and he has said, well, let's wait until the fourth quarter launch, because he's quite confident that we will be satisfied that the implementation of our CRP is actually meeting the needs. I have doubts around that, so that's why I just wanted to get some clarity around the fourth launch of that. However, we have reached out to Kim.
Yes.
Kim this week to see if she would come aboard to be governor. So we will pull the police in screaming and kicking and some shit will happen.
Yeah, she's very, very good. She's in the strategic meetings. Kim's very good. Yeah, she's excellent. Yeah, good.
I can just add that there is anxiety around health services across the country. It's not just for us. And also because it's a change, there is a lot of training going to happen in the next couple of weeks for all our staff. And it will be uploaded on the internet as well, so that if any of our colleagues are in a situation with patient, they know exactly what to do.
Great. Sorry to lengthen this out. There's more questions for Roisin and Vanessa, but I've got just a couple more I just want to clarify. So in the report, Roisin made reference to reducing the bank usage, particularly having a focus around acute and urgent care secure services. And I just had some concerns in relation to what that would actually look like in reality, because those services often are the most challenged. And what assurances can you give, even though it's the right
And of course, as a headline, it sounds, doesn't it, exactly what you just described, is we're going to reduce it because we think we can't afford it as opposed to what's needed. And that isn't the case. What we're clear about is that we have increased the number of substantive staff that we've got, we've reduced the vacancy, but actually our overall use of workforce is still much higher. So what's going on? So there's something happening around. So, and then when we look at what are the reasons for why that is being used, we're not convinced that that's being utilised appropriately. So we can see that where examples are, they're using it for vacancies, but actually when we look at, when we drill down into the data, that particular area may not actually have vacancies. They did have, they no longer have, but the level of vacancies is still high. So, and we know that when we did the work around stopping agency, having those really open conversations with the divisions, with the teams about the level of usage and what they were needing it for, helped everyone understand better what good actually could look like for their online workers. So we're just taking that similar approach to what we did with the agency to bank, to scrutinise a bit more, get underneath it a bit more, help people understand what the expectations are around their decision.
It's just like when you see it, and understanding some of the challenges in those areas, issues and other things.
Yeah, so consistently from what Roisin is saying, we want to be both accountability of making sure we've got appropriate roster in place for but also some of the controls that we put in place, they have worked. When we made the commitment that we should have an HTA in any of those roles, it was an appropriate thing to do. And it worked because you can see that when we started, we were receiving quite significant number of requests to have agency HCAs. I can safely say now, for the past 8 weeks, we've had none, because we've managed to put those controls. And we have some specific outliers for acute and aging care where we're getting that sort of demand, and there's been a lot of work through this team to manage some of that as well.
That's brilliant, and it's good to hear that you picked up on the effectiveness of e-rostering, which has been biblical, bear in mind, sometimes not even able to say that.
When we repeat the e-rostering, it's also, I know when we've looked at individual areas, there's been good practice in some cases. What you've got is a mix of some areas that well, some do it badly. Just make sure you do it properly and you've got the right level of staff. So it's also timing with the same staffing, numbers properly and getting that right. So there's a whole range of things. But I think what we talk about generally is we're really busy, i.e. across the police, and not in every case. So it's making sure you're using the proper control traffic, using the rostering properly.
Yes.
So I describe us in a phase of transition at the moment around the planning and allocation of staffing. We've fully rolled out of the training now around e-roster. So all of our managers in place have had access to that and we're all booked on, and that will happen by the end of December. What we do have though is a lot of variation at the moment between how people plan and allocate work and how they do that either with their teams or not including their teams. One of the things I'm monitoring at the moment is not just the establishment and setting and sign-up of rotas, but how many changes happen between that point to 6 weeks in advance, and then when the shift actually is worked. And we've identified quite significant variation across the piece, largely driven by unplanned absence and staff changes. But some of our rotas do change by 100% since they've been originally set, and that's the extreme. So we're monitoring improvement and reduction of that variation. Why I describe it as transition is you've had a lot of leaders in a situation where they have had to cover a lot of unplanned absence and vacancies for some time, so they get in the way of working and they get in the way of allocating work, and staff also have expectations around how that allocation occurs and are in a much more flexible space around that forward planning. So moving now into actually we're more settled, vacancies are being filled, we're retaining more staff, we're building the competence and expertise of staff. That will all add now to us being able to say let's have a bit of a reset and make sure that we're not just doing the planning but then sticking with the plan. And I think that will really then start to show some dividends.
Great, thank you. Final comment from me, just I think it's worth noting in the report, I think it's under yours, Vanessa, in terms of the practice in our recovery in the year and the dual diagnosis team, working with the they do a fantastic job. Myself and Machine visited recovery in the year, myself and John also did as well. Are we coming, is that service shortly coming up to the end of their commissioning contract period? How confident are we that they will secure the contract next time around?
Yes and no. No, I mean, well, obviously we're working together as partners, you know, we would want to continue the service very much so. So yeah, I know we've had a report that's come through FPP committee around that tender coming up, so yeah, that's what I'd like to say. Yeah, hopefully speaking about the team.
Just to show you what done with this development team, I've already started conversations with the team.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Just wanted to, you know, it's important that we support our colleagues in your areas, support our colleagues in Northampton so they don't feel as if they're the coordination out there by themselves. They are an integral part of the team, and they do fantastic work. And their sort of joint working and collaborative work that they do works really, really well.
Very integrated. So in the initiative side as well, I believe we had an ICCR deep dive quite recently, and that featured in that conversation. So it's been part of our gatherings and making sure that we're staying alive to that.
Excellent. And I know some of the issues they responded to them as well in terms of some of the challenges that they've got. We've worked with those.
These are the one that we do about what's in Birmingham. So the Birmingham one, which we identified, which CTL provides, then if there's all these drawings that we can care for, And I think we just have to be really thoughtful about how we make sure that the right level.
I think it relates to what you made earlier, so about, what does collaboration, what opportunities does that provide for having consistency of approach across populations that we're serving.
Great, thank you. Long, worthwhile as key areas within your reports. So, is it yourself, Kat, that's actually going to be?
I'll take that.
I'll take David's report, yeah. Thank you.
Great. You've got the report there. It feels like this one sets out a culmination of the work and discussions that we've done over the last year to reframe the strategic risks, clearly link them to the strategic priorities, and look to modernise and streamline how we report on our board assurance framework as well. So the report sets out all the new risks that we talked through at the board strategy session last month, along with the timeline. So we're looking to take the full risk detail through committees during October and November, ready for approval at board in December. So then we start off 2025 with a new BAF, which will really start to drive the conversations that we have at committee level and subsequently at board. Within the report, the current BAF is also included for noting. It has been updated recently as well, just to kind of continue the current BAF in its holding position until we get the new BAF approved in December.
That was short and sweet, thank you. Can I open that up for any questions in relation to that?
Not a question, really more of a comment. Following a Kevin Mines away day on Monday, we talked about the need for a BAF for Kevin Mines as well, so I'll be working with Kat and Hannah to put that together.
Will it be a separate BAF or will it be one BAF?
Probably a separate
I think it
one.
feels like it would be a separate BAF.
Yeah, probably a separate one.
Any other comments on the BAF?
Not a comment, I just wondered if I could take the opportunity to just give a little bit of additional information about BAF 10, which is around our clinical and regular management supervision.
Yes.
We've noted at the time of completing the BAF that we were in transition in terms of appropriate leadership for this area of work in the trust and our trajectories for achievement. So just to let the board know that I've picked this up now personally with our heads of nursing and clinical nurse managers. We're now managing it through our safe and staffing committee, which then reports into QPEX. So we've got that line. Our results in August were quite disappointing, but for September we've seen a 16-point improvement on clinical supervision, which is now sitting at 77.9%, so much more in the region that we're looking for and expecting. And our regular management supervision is up 12 points from 41 to 53%, so much more work that I want to do on that, but just to reassure people that in the next month we'll finalise the policy, we'll have clear trajectories in place, and I'm hoping that we start to see sustainability of this improvement that we're starting to see.
What was the problem?
I think, I'm not sure it's so much a problem, it's a matter of just, I think, how you engage people with the priority to support them to understand the value at all levels, so for our leaders as well as our staff. And I think that enabling people to understand the longer term gains of having clinical and regular management supervision as part of our culture of how we support our colleagues to be effective, as opposed to the sort of focusing on getting through the day, really starts to patch shift some of the value. And I think we've spoken to our professional colleagues across the organisation about our own responsibilities for clinical supervision. You are a healthy practitioner, and it's certainly something that's checked in my one-to-ones, and I talk about the connections I have other than in my day job to enable my practice to continue to be live and appropriate.
I think it's really helpful that you raise this, because I think it's also an opportunity for us to make a connection between our role as a commissioner and our role as a provider. So, in our role as a commissioner at the last commissioning committee, we were informed that this is an area of concern of us as a provider, that actually this has been an ongoing issue, that we heard very clearly that the concern from a commissioning perspective is that some services are reaching 100% and others are not reaching anywhere near that. So there's a question mark about what is really going on. But equally we heard that actually consideration is being given and which we agreed with to us receiving a contractual notice around this improvement. And we want to hear more about that today with our commissioning hats on. But it's an opportunity, I think, for it's the fact that it's on here, but actually there's a very low risk that it will result in us receiving contractual performance notice. So it's really beneficial that this person is taking that interest in getting a better understanding about what's happening and encouraging us to really think about how we can make a difference to, because this is important. This is very much like having a care plan and ongoing discussion with the patient and observe issues. So it's important that staff have that opportunity to be supported, to understand where they're doing well, but also for them to have a conversation about how they're feeling about being
Yeah, well, we won't really. I think pathway looks like what kind of comes before earnings, which are in that characteristics 16, which is a lot less than we saw some months ago. I just want to highlight one of them, which I'm concerned about, which is our failure to realize our mission from an anti-racist as a discrimination organisation. And I think we need to put some focus on that. I was just trying to correlate that with the committee update reports, and it's now we didn't look at the last committee. But for me, I think we need to, as an organisation, start to really look at that. The other areas we're looking at our financial resources, looking at our working partnership funds, but this one hasn't really been there for quite some time, does it? No. It just doesn't seem, it seems counterintuitive where we're getting national recognition for the work we are doing for our people, but equally we're not able to demonstrate that we're making some inroads to become an anti-racist and discriminatory organisation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, because it's that very much around, is what we're doing having an impact on, is it demonstrable? Is it demonstrable through, through the kind of data we're getting back through things? And it might be that what we might want to ask on is to think about, what does the deep dive into that look like? In terms of, the actions we're taking, whether there's demonstrability around that, whether they're being sensed, and actually there's going to be a delay in us being able to be much more meaningful about the impact that having.
But I think in many ways we're more holistic as a lot of organisations. I think because we've got more work on it, I know you don't have a work on the anti-racist organisation. Some organisations just assume that they're okay. I don't think we're in that space, which is a good thing. And equally means that can we put the focus on it to demonstrate how we're doing what we're doing about it. And there's always going to be a disconnect as well between what we're saying and what's on the health rates. I think we just need to just take focus on it.
So there's two options. One is that we, after the committee, we could think about a strategic session as a board to think through, think that through a bit more.
Sue and Patrick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're starting to embark on some work with the Race Action Code, which will actually provide that diagnostic as where we are as an organisation. So that work is starting to happen now. So provide, I suppose that will help us to determine our progress in terms of looking at this as one of our strategic objectives.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to suggest that it would be helpful maybe for the committee for us to do a deep dive at some point, specifically on that, and then do a strategic session. So I think that might be the right move of sequencing here, the session in terms of what Sue has highlighted. The reason work that's happening to really sense check are we making progress, because some of the intelligence is sitting in different places is how we can move forward together really get a sense of are we really moving through the dial or not.
And it's not just race, it's also disability as well. Yeah. We just need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
And also just aware of the gender and LGBTQ, because sometimes we can really look at that. But I think it's all of it, isn't it?
Yeah, there is the intersectionality within that, which we do consider when we report, if you recall, the last, I think it's the last meeting where we just, raising ideas, reported, it appealed very clean.
It was. I think it's a really good point because I think it's a good point that Winston raised in terms of the fact that we've stepped out and said this is our intention, this is what we are actually going to do, and then we also then need to be holding ourselves to account to see have we shifted the dial in any way, what more do we, because as Patrick said, there's lots of different things that happen, but we actually need to be refeeding that data and that information back into the organisation to power, we are making some inroads. We're not saying that we're completely resolved this, and Winston's right as well in terms of the protected characteristics as well. But because I was really heartened around disability at the last board, and particularly focused around neurodiversity and around capability as well. So there's some work that we've got to do.
I think what I'm reading is that there's a bit of there needs to be more clarity about whether it's an anti-racist objective or whether it's an anti-discriminatory objective, because they're two different things in my mind. And if we're talking about intersectionality and inclusion of other protected characteristics, then perhaps it's not just specifically an anti-racist objective that it needs to be. Maybe it does need to be more inclusive around anti-discriminatory.
I mean, that's our commitment is to race, we are to the right anti-racist, anti-discriminatory. It's one sentence. That needs to demonstrate.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think as a board as well, it's probably been about 3 years now since we've had some development around the leadership in this space around being anti-racist and anti-discriminatory. Since then, the board has changed. We might just need to reflect on what is it that we need to do collectively to continue to show leadership.
Yeah, yes.
I think just on this specific risk as well, just to kind of provide some assurance that when People Committee were talking about what their new risks could look like, there was some discussion about whether this could be more about culture and the culture of the organisation, but people felt so strongly about the anti-racism, the anti-discriminatory framework that one has stayed. So there is that real focus on this is what we need to be doing for the organisation and talking about it broadly.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure we focus on what Richard talked about there, because it depends how you measure this. It's about the outcomes. Depending on what you define, inevitably that's going to take a while before what we do makes a difference. So it's whether we've got anything that's a lead indicator, is it making a difference? What we just do isn't necessarily going to result in that, so we just need to look at how to measure that as being successful or not, what's right.
Yeah, that's great.
Sorry, the last one, just to Dave's point, totally agree with you. Sometimes reporting assurance on the controls rather than actually the outcomes, and it's just being clear on when do we actually say we're turning the dial in terms of the risk, because otherwise we just be focusing on the controls.
Yeah, I was the one who voted for a much more sort of cultural view, and I think you mechanise some of these things, only mechanise some of these things, and I think culture is a feeling. And if you walk into an organisation, you feel the culture. You can go into very, very successful businesses, as soon as you walk through the door, you know where you are. And I think that's the holy grail in my view. And I think in some instances we can focus too much on the metrics, if we're not careful, and end up mechanising things, which isn't productive in my view. So it's just something to watch out for.
Yeah, okay, good point. Coming back to paper, which is back paper, thank you for the work that's actually been done. Do the committees now feel that the back is actually driving the kind of key priority discussions in their committees, because it should be now?
Very much clear underpinning now to the committees, absolutely. It's been a great piece of work, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks, Kat. So we're going to the IPR integrated performance report. Jason.
So I wasn't at FPP, and I know there's quite a lot of discussion there, and there's why I might want to add into it. So Vanessa's already talked about the outskirts, just a couple of things that can on that. So the thing you were describing before, it is described here, the old measure is called inappropriate outskirts offenders. It's now active and appropriate adult mental health outskirts replacements. So it's a bit lengthy, but that's the change that we talked about. I think people are aware of, but as well as being the outskirts or inappropriate, it's also, whether it's in area or appropriate or whatever, we're still using all those things that we've attracted forward from the before. So we need to make sure we recognise those parts going through and know we're aware of that, just like that. The talking therapies, I think we've already said several times, this has been a significant improvement over and above where we started, where we really focused on this. A lot of people looked at it. It is something that on the commissioning side we've seen as being something we've got to do more of, and I think the ICP sees that. I think we do need to recognise what is for us to do, what's for the system to do, but also improvements has happened. I think there was a deal of discussion about the waiting times, in terms of the paper in here. What we're likely to be doing to make this much more transparency is going on, using the deep dives and the red and the green matrices that are included in here. We're likely to write out, just so that we can show what that looks like in the overall terms. That would also include the waiting times, the relevant waiting times in those specific teams, etc. coming through. Lisa and I have already had a brief conversation about the quality piece as well, and make sure we've got quality that relates to individual teams rather than trying one. So I think we've got to get into that part, looking across the team, right across, as opposed to just metrics going down to the organisation. And also just reflecting the some of the people ones, we have still got a quite significant divergence between different areas. So for instance, qualified nursing is still 20% vacancies, ICTR 16% vacancies, but reflect there has been a significant increase in staffing posts over the last year. So we are seeing that, but it's how we just make sure we're aligned to what's the impact in different areas and that differential. I don't think there's anything else I particularly wanted to go through. I'm happy to answer any questions and also reflect on anything that happened at the FPP. So,
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, it might be something that Vanessa might want to comment on, but it's the understanding, we talked about it a little bit earlier around the new neighbourhood models mental health teams, and that picking up sort of 30,000 new referrals into that. But that understanding of the patient need there, and almost that unmet need there, and the links into how CMHT's transformation is occurring, and it hasn't necessarily changed the demand on the CMHTs from what I understand, and I suppose it's just understanding that more and some sort of ongoing deep dive into that, that whole pathway, and whether it's different in the different areas of the city in terms of whether the new NHMTs were addressing some of those health inequalities in that first instance of recognising that on that need to start with in the early part of the pathway. So it's really complex, isn't it? But it's quite striking, that information there, the numbers, and not necessarily the same people that we were seeing before.
Yeah.
Quite notable, isn't it?
Yeah, Absolutely. And I suppose people that we are seeing may not have come into secondary care mental health services, but may eventually have, but obviously because of picking up early, having those conversations. And, you know, it's not everything, no, it's not services that we may deliver, it may be putting onto a pathway to access voluntary sector organisations, something in local communities, so that's really, really working. I think we've seen it more in the south, around, it's prevented, I mean, I don't have the actual figures in my head, but I remember seeing some information to say it's prevented so many people going into secondary care based on previous people coming into secondary care. And it's helped people also be discharged sooner, because you're discharging as opposed directly back to the GP, but stepping down to the mental health team, having that conversation more in primary care with the GPs, and then discharging. So it's multi. It works from sort of both ends, but I think maybe that deep dive and that more information to actually show what it's doing, I think that might be quite helpful, because we do collect a lot of data. There's a lot of slides and everything and information. We could probably get Renu and then maybe the wider senior leadership teams can have a discussion with us.
And that would possibly map into the health inequality.
Absolutely, they've got some great work
that
on that.
they're doing, that it may well be highlighting that as well, and
Yeah.
just how it's addressing that.
Yeah, definitely do that.
Thank you.
I think one of the positive things about the performance report is where we're doing the deep dives, actually. Yeah. Because I think that demonstrates some sort of grit. Yeah. About where we're looking at the issues of quality or operational performance, workforce inclusion things. And the deep dive into the waiting list, I think was quite a leading thing. And we came up with 2 committees, things like keepers. And that also FPP, that's what I really didn't know, that's FPP. And it just, because there's a quality aspect to it, which is people wait till they're going to get earlier. And then the performance aspect is someone what we're doing about addressing the longer waiters. I think it's we're on the start of the journey, but it's definitely an area of focus that we have to have a look at, because ADHD we know about, talking therapies we know about, but there's other ones which we think, well, what's that clinical impact? I think the challenge again at Cupid was how do you weigh up, a long way from neuropsychiatry with ADHD with solar is one much more significant than another, and it's a hard thing to do though, isn't it? So I think we have to consider that as an organisation. It may pull on resources to what's clear from me is that I didn't realise we had so many patients waiting 52 weeks. And that's also
Sorry, just in response. So there's also taking into account the internal audit report that's talking about waiting times. So using that as the catalyst to fit the overall one. I think what we've also done is say for each service, what's the appropriate quality and waiting time? So in some cases, 52 weeks is right, can't be. But in other cases, you'd have significantly different. I do know that we've seen when we go to the PD into the deep dives, the teams in the different areas do this really well in most cases. There are some gaps where we're really challenged, but they've been looking at this actively. It's how we get that right balance between what's the safe level, so what's the expectation that we should be delivering, and how do we do against them, and then how do we make sure we're individually things like the vacancies and other part of the impact on. So what stops us delivering? Is it the she talked about earlier on the demand supply balance as well? So for each of these, we've got to refine that a bit more to be more exact what we're looking at. We'd also want to include things in terms of benchmarking. So what's the external reference you're using and what good looks like? But we're on that journey at this stage.
Yeah, just sort of picked up David's statement. We talked about earlier on, just sort of trying to get like an end-to-end service-specific heat map type view, which you can then, I think, as a board, I think it will help us become even more strategic than we are. I think the work that we've done to change the optics on this and get this to the level that it has been tremendous. It's great. I just think, just moving it up a level, and it will actually help us from a perspective of being more strategic. We can actually look at where the pinch points are specific to services. And you can then say, okay, is it a resource issue? Is it a quality issue? Is it, and how that then collectively is impacting the trust financially. I think that is, if we can move to that as quickly as we can. I'm just sort of looking at data really to see whether the teams can sort of even pedal faster than they are at the moment. I appreciate how hard they already are, but
but what we also need to do is understand what's the bit that we hold up front in terms of the community service and neighbourhood service. So it isn't CMHC neighbourhood, so all that chunk is people who are caring for and looking after events and going in, as well as that next chunk in that part. So we've got a lot of data, it's just trying to get that insight and how we make sure it goes across teams, and this is what Tom's talked about several times.
Yeah.
It's just trying to understand, how do we monitor that? So it's really easy to understand, because at the minute you've got all this stuff, we don't really get the insights of the market.
Or maybe we pick on a pathway or a service and just
So if it's an individual service, so it's that bunch of people, they need to be supported at the level. Have we got the right number of people in the right areas? We have got the resource and the, I suppose, supply to deal with them and that, what's the imbalance there?
I mean, maybe this is a debate for finance and community, but what we do know is that the more we encourage local teams and divisions to own their data, to determine what they're going to create focus on, they know their population best, and that's what we ought to be encouraging. So I think there's something for us about all of these are important, and if we as a board determine that only one of them is, we miss the opportunity to support teams to recognise that in their provision, in their the lens that they need to look through is that we want them to for ensuring that actually access is as timely as
Yeah, I was just saying, I think, it goes back to sort of the demand and capacity piece. So I think the slides are really helpful that, it has been presented at a delivery group. But the question there, and I described it as PP committees, is the so what? So we're meeting again tomorrow, so we were asking, so divisions to come back and have that start of that conversation. Is it that they haven't got the capacity, for example, looking at perinatal services, we know more resources coming in there, we don't think that'll be such a challenge. ADHD, I could describe FP, is a national issue and a national challenge, so, what do we do collectively? And we're going to have to prioritise. Do we prioritise really focusing on the urgent care pathway where people are really poorly? We can obviously have our eye on this as well. We just need to decide that. But I do absolutely advocate for, again, just repeating what Rashida said around the divisions coming up with their plans, owning this information and working things through together. And again, this is not just us. This is part of our wider partnerships. It's the ask on our communities as well. Which I think, our divisions are getting more understanding around that. For an example, from a crisis perspective, do we need to provide all the crisis support? We have crisis talk-based cafes that we commission and we work with Mind on. How can they work and support? So, it's working in train, but we'll have that further conversation tomorrow in FPP, performance delivery group, and bring that through to FPP committee as well.
I think one of the things we know from historically from experience is if we only think about waiting times, we create goals.
Absolutely.
So actually this is about that whole pathway piece, because actually, we can crack a waiting time and then something may wait longer for treatment because we've got our energy and resource there. So I think that's the beauty of having the divisions to try what your pathway is to look like and how they're going to tackle it.
I've just got a couple of things. One of them is the CRFD, the clinical ready for discharge. The RPR makes it very clear that the main reason for the delays in acute are lack of public funding and support accommodation and other nursing home placement, and that's where the joint work with our local authority colleagues is crucial. Fact the funding panels, I do know that sometimes people are waiting a long time just to get a decision from the funding panels, and I don't know if that's there are reasons why there are delays. There are financial reasons for the local authority why they're delaying making decisions and sort of stretching it out. The impact that actually has on this is significant. So it's really crucial the way that you're going to do, as that they get a clear understanding that we know the challenges that you have financially, but the impact of a lack of decision
there's quite a lot of people being clinically ready to discharge and having nowhere to go. So I think it's really important. The other point about the IPR, I love seeing this particular document because you see everything very clearly mapped out in some of the areas where we need to focus on around improving the performance, and wondered whether, particularly the point that you were making about the divisions coming up with their own plans and areas of argument, how that will link in with, and this is not just about thinking about our regulators, but just looking at the well-led process, linking the IPR to well-led review, and then linking that to a useful sort of.
I do say that they do that well. Yeah. I don't think the individual points out it equally. I'm not sure CQC that's something like that, because they're looking at the overall pieces of to do what we say we're going to do and picking out those things we're not doing in there. It might be a bonus in that. It's not something I think they'll be reflecting like. I can recall seeing this and
I was actually thinking about CQC.
No, I know, I agree with that.
But having said that about the regulatory view, is that we understand our risks, we know what our performance requirements are, and we're working to improve in all the areas that we should be improving and managing that appropriately, particularly around the domain of responsiveness. All of the things that we've talked about today would be recognised, and then the view would be, are we making progress, and what progress are we making? That would be the view, and I think the refresh of the BAF and potential time measures then, and how we articulate what we're delivering in the BAF in the insurance framework with data that backs that up would enhance. I
just think, yeah, that's an excellent one, because when I was reading, I was thinking about, for example, the CPAs, the appraisals and all that. And then saying that's why I said it isn't just about for the purposes of our regulator, but it's so that we can actually measure, you know, how well led we are, how responsive we are, how caring we are, and using the IPR to give us that barometer and to see what else do we need and what we need to do, what else do we need to do, and also placing back responsibility and accountability on those divisions, on those key leaders to take responsibility for this.
Yeah, just wanted to give some examples where some of our teams have done some innovations, like the Solar team and the Longreach team, where the whole team gave 100 to 200 appointments in 1 week and just, saw people, at least many of them could then move on to other things. But we've also had system conversations because a lot of people, the same people, are waiting for mental health and physical health appointments. And what can we do as a mental health and community collaborative to join up and save the patients and carers time and join up and provide that in those neighbourhoods and localities? So that there's a lot of discussion on this. And even when people are waiting, how can we use our community assets? How can we use our voluntary sector so people don't have to feel like they've got nothing? So it doesn't mean that because you're on a waiting list, you can't get any help, and we've got to do more of that work as well.
So can you just take that away as a consideration to think about how it could be sort of embedded or included in the IPR, this sort of like wild kind of lens?
The next thing where we use these metrics, that's the thing about getting into this, is the metrics, these are these discussions we've had in there, that's happening. We've just got to watch this. Yeah, it's not on the board. And in terms of audit reports, which as the board seen, I think what we've got to be working out, how do we answer that question? Because otherwise, you send in evidence as well as you're doing management. Just go get on my arms and articulate that.
Is there any other questions? Yeah.
I suppose it's just thinking about other models and ways to use the IPR as well, based on the discussions that have come out today, because there are, obviously lots of other trusts use IPRs, they're all different. but there are ones out there that link to their ward assurance framework. There are others out there that set out operations, people in quadrants, and just really just set it out in different ways. So, I mean, as part of the work that Dave and the team are doing, I'm sure that all would have been considered, but I think just having that look at what other trusts are doing as well and how it's pulled together, just might address some of the conversations that are coming up there.
I think the thing that will enable us to do that properly is the next stage of doing the strategy and the outcome, etc. Having the back is actually measuring this alongside it. So I think we're already, if you like, working that intuitively with the committees, etc. And then just looking at what we're doing. The danger is you're right, no one's got this absolutely. Some are better than others. Often we spend such a long time changing it. It's what we do.
Yeah. Thank you everyone. Moving on to QPES, I'm sure.
Thank you, Chair. We've had two QPES meetings since the last board, and Winston kindly chaired one fully in August. But I'll report for both, but appreciate that Winston might want to contribute, obviously, as well as Lisa. In terms of the August meeting, this was where we were first appraised of the two-day CQC inspection at Braeside, where significant issues were escalated around leadership and cultural challenges, staff shortages, high levels of acuity, and drugs being brought onto the site. And I'm pleased to report that at the most recent QPES, we were able to look at the single improvement plan that's being developed for Braeside, and we were positive about that, but obviously not fully assured because it's work in progress, but we will have continued oversight of progress in relation to that. The other alert in the August meeting was around the infection prevention control team, and their capacity has been reduced, I think, for some time. And this has impacted on the service delivery. I understand that recruitment is taking place, and I think you may well be back at full capacity now. Another alert in the August meeting was around the patient safety report, identifying a number of unclosed EPITS reports, and the trajectories for the closure of those incidents has been looked at through Directorate Deep Dive meetings and is going to be monitored closely again. In terms of there's been a piece of work been going on for some time across reviewed by QPES, and that's following the internal audit review of clinical governance committees, which identified a number of areas where we need to strengthen our governance on this. I'm pleased to report that we had a good sort of report on the work that's been done on this, in terms of there was a workshop of thinking in September that found a lot of opportunities where we could improve our focus and look at delivering our quality priorities by using data, identifying and disseminating learning, and managing risks, and also reducing the duplication across the different reporting structures in the organisation. So we look forward to seeing that sort of reported back to us in terms of strengthening that assurance of the sort of board to clinical governance committee to QPES and on to board. In terms of assured in the August meeting, we've had positive assurance around the clinical services strategy from quarter one, as well as the quality strategy. We were pleased to note that we've been, I think it might have been mentioned in Rasheen's report, around being identified as one of 6 providers nationally to lead the development of the 24/7 mental health service pilot. And we noticed the committee that this being a great opportunity for us to work with our local communities and experts by experience to shape the services, and also to build on our existing community transformation work. Okay, and then coming on to the most recent committee, which took place on the 18th of September, we were alerted, as we have discussed here today, about the concerns in relation to waiting times, in particular with ADHD and the SOLAR waiting times, that's the CAM services in Solihull. And we'll look to have reporting back on how those risks are being managed across the divisions and how to be sure that appropriate support is in place. We were assured in this committee on the draft report, I think it's still draft, of the CQC report, obviously it's MHTs, and the draft report has an improved rating of good, which is really positive. I'm not sure we have the final report yet. We also were assured by our safeguarding annual report, and there was a lot of evidence of increasing activity within the organisation and driven by our leadership within the safeguarding team. Similarly, we were provided with the Freedom to Speak Up report, which provided us on assurance on identifying themes and the increasing champions across the divisions for support. And we were assured by our established weekly safety huddles continue to operate. And also really assured by, we've made a change in that the PAIR group, which is the patient experience and recovery. Thank you. So patient experience and recovery group will report into the committee directly, so that we have that sort of expert experience within the committee going forwards. And then we've already mentioned this, we revised about our flu campaign, and the launch of the flu campaign has been launched. I think it's probably on time. Is there anything else on this journey please highlight?
Just what's that point, and that's a meeting was that meeting the team was working on looking at the governance and discussing the organisation, and just really all we can say is that sort of root and branch, rebuild up that kind of infrastructure for how we get assurance for the non-clinical governance committees all the way through to the keeper. So that provided a sort of real degree of assurance around governance, as well as leadership, as well as and information class and keepers. I thought it was quite impressive. The challenge is that actually making it actually work in practice, because individuals want to go back to type, go back to what we did before. I think I thought it's a pretty good piece of work actually. Well,
Brilliant. I've just got a couple of questions just for the committee really. I haven't heard for a while kind of update in relation to RLA managers and the work that they're doing, and the legislative committee group work. Does that get fed into QPES? And when will we get some assurance as a board that you guys are actually satisfied and getting assurance in relation to that?
Yeah, so it's a quarterly reporting to the committee, and so it's scheduled, so it will be, the next report is due in November, so therefore in December at board you will receive that assurance.
It just seems a long time. I've not heard anything around that.
1 was deferred, that's why it will come up, it's been a long time.
That might be helpful to report to you in the future. I think the deferred that we're expecting to get assurance on.
Yeah.
Also, just to say, Phil, we're doing some work around our forward planners for next year as well, particularly in line with the board assurance framework for all of the committees. So we're reviewing how often things are coming and how they're reported up to board as well.
Yeah. Are there any other questions for Sue or Lisa? Okay, thank you. So we're moving on with
with the infection prevention control annual reports presented to us.
And Nika's joining us, who's our infection control.
Let's take a break. Sorry. I will try to be break.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'll open the window a little bit. You don't get it's only like that.